Okay, hello everyone. It's William here from Stroke Recovery Secrets Mastermind Facebook group, and I'm here with the legendary stroke powerhouse, Ralph Preston. So, me and Ralph have actually gotten to know each other over the last few months over on Facebook, and I still remember the first time when I saw some of the comments which Ralph was posting on Facebook, and I realized that this is a stroke survivor who has really done a lot of the work in his own recovery and he's really come a long way. And based on, I guess, a lot of the information and a lot of the things he posted, I could tell that this is someone who really had a lot of insight into how recovery after stroke happened, and I think his recovery speaks for itself. Um, Given that he is someone who has achieved what almost a 100% recovery from his own stroke. Would you say that's true, Ralph?
Oh, yeah, that's pretty much true. It's nice to hear. I guess I think I know something sometimes. It's nice to hear that you agree in some cases. I learned a lot starting with my own recovery. I was a bit of a maniac going at it like 8, 10 hours a day, all day, every day for about 14 months, 7 days a week. I realize most people won't do that, but that's what I did. The other thing that helped me a lot and continues to help me is I'm a real detail oriented person. I'm a photographer. I notice everything. I've got pretty good self awareness about my body. I know how to listen to my body. So all those things help. And now that I help other stroke survivors, I kind of apply that same level of detail to watching what they're doing, paying attention to things that don't work. When you ask somebody to do a task and they can't quite do it, you can really help them a lot if you figure out how to maybe break it down or make it simpler or do something to alleviate their fear so that they can concentrate on the task. So I'm always thinking about this stuff. After I got better, I took a couple of years off, and then I started running a stroke group, and we couldn't hardly find any stroke survivors. So there was a stroke survivor and her friend, another woman who was bringing her, and we started doing things on our own. And eventually, I found out that her friend Kelly was a stroke survivor, and Kelly's friend Kathy was doing physical therapy with her, and they asked me to fill in while Kathy was going to California for 3 weeks. So I did. And then a second time when Kathy was mom's had a hip replacement, she was gone for 3 weeks. After the second time, I said, if I kept doing this, Kelly would get twice as much therapy. So I continued for actually almost 5 years until she moved away. But that kind of got me going into thinking about helping other people. And I did that under the direction of a retired physical therapist, and he started finding me other stroke survivors. He worked at a free, well, we both volunteered at a free medical clinic, and so I just took on a young man recently who had a terrible brain aneurysm, and he'll make 11 local survivors. Like I mentioned, some I've worked with up to 5 years, so I've learned a lot about all kinds of recoveries because I run into things that I didn't have to deal with in mine. But they're much harder for me because when I have the personal experience, it's just like a piece of cake. Oh, I did this. And when it's something that I didn't have to overcome, I've got to put myself in that person's shoes and figure it out. And I love that challenge. I'm just here to say I'm having a good time doing what I'm doing. People don't quite understand because I pretty much do this full time between my Facebook group, adminning another, answering questions, and yours and 5 or 6 others, working with 3 people locally, and also I make videos on what I did to get better, and now I'm starting to branch out into some of these other things I've learned with other people, uh, techniques that I didn't necessarily apply myself. So between the videos, Facebook groups, answering questions, and 3 local folks, I stay pretty busy with it. But like I make a joke and tell people I don't golf, although I'm staring at a golf course right now. I live in a golf community, and I don't hunt or fish either. So I need some kind of hobby, and I'm just thrilled with this one because I've basically been trying to learn everything I can about stroke ever since I had mine. Period. Probably like you have. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
you at some
definitely.
point made a decision to go to occupational therapy school.
Mm.
So I think I'm preaching to the choir here, probably.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and I mean, I think what you're doing is really good because I mean, I still remember when I had my stroke about 7 years ago. Like, I would have killed to be able to talk to someone who had traveled the journey already and who already had done the work on themselves to have that insight into actually knowing, what works and I guess how the brain actually recovers from stroke and being able to I guess condense that and give it to me and allow me to sort of have a look through the binoculars which they've been fortunate to look through to sort of get that perspective about what's possible and what they can achieve after they've had a stroke, because quite often a lot of stroke survivors are faced with a lot of unknowns after stroke, and like particularly the ones who I coach, some of them are 2 years, 3 years post stroke, and they've pretty much given up. But then I just tell them, look, you know, there is another way to approach stroke. I mean, some of the information out there which which they've been given, unfortunately, some of it can be a little bit disempowering in that there are people like there are doctors saying that this is as much as you can recover, so on and so forth. There is no other alternative.
Well, yeah, I got 2 things. Um, One, whenever anybody says, to a stroke survivor, it's a real pet peeve of mine that this is all you're going to get, or there's an 18-month window, or whatever. I don't really believe that. I definitely believe in neuroplasticity, and I think it exists at all times in our lives. But uh, my own experience and the experience that I've had working with other people tells me that science is right. There's a lot more neuroplasticity closer to your event. Now, does that mean if you're 18 months out, you should give up? No. The thing that I don't understand is how a lot of these folks get 18 months or 3 years out without doing much. And then all of a sudden and I'm not trying to pick on anybody here. It's just I monitor a lot of stroke groups, and I maybe I'm reading between the lines and shouldn't be, but I see a lot of people who seem like they didn't do a whole lot, and then they start to have this like, oh, I'm about to have my 3rd anniversary, and I'm still not better. I, better do something about this. And I don't understand why they don't start on day one. Before we started recording, I was telling you about somebody who said, "Oh, I finally got into PT. I can go in 3 weeks." And I'm thinking, you got 21 days before it starts. Well, that's 21 days you could do something at home. As you know, both you and I are big believers in you get better at home. Before we get into that, the one thing you named the reason that I do this. When I had my stroke, I was in a rehab hospital. I turned around. I had nurses, doctors. If I had a question, I could ask it, and then they sent me home. And all of a sudden, I didn't have a way to get an answer to anything other than the internet. And so I did a lot of that. So about 100% of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is just like you. I would have killed to have somebody like me to talk to at that point in time. So I'm trying to be that person for as many people as I can. I also forgot to mention I'm probably private chatting like you, or I know you're private chatting with people. I probably private chatted and sent videos and had long, lengthy, multi-day, multi-week conversations with, 80 or 100 I can't solve the whole thing, but if there were a lot more you and me's, then, bigger chunks of it would be getting solved, and there would be somebody there for, a lot more folks. That's kind of the concept behind my group, which is called Stroke Buddies by and for stroke survivors. I started thinking, we got 800,000 people in the United States have a stroke every year. Well, we got 8 million stroke survivors. So that's 10 survivors for everybody who has a stroke every year. So if only 1 in 10 people took on somebody, everybody'd have a buddy. Now, I've had a real hard time trying to implement that concept, particularly on Facebook, because you can't search anybody by their location or anything like that. So I have registered strokebuddies.org. In fact, I renewed it yesterday, and I'm eventually going to take some of what I'm doing to a nonprofit website. The other thing about Facebook is every picture, every video that anybody posts in your group gets loaded into videos and pictures, and they're real hard to find, and phones and iPads and tablets sometimes don't have a video tab, or they don't have a photos tab, so it's really hard to send somebody to something. So I centered around my YouTube channel for that reason, because I can keep everything there, and I can just post links, and I can go back to my YouTube channel and find a video very easily, whereas Facebook, I can't even find my own posts, and I think I'm pretty damn good with Facebook myself. But their search algorithms don't always include everything. Even if I put words I know that I wrote into the thing, it doesn't find it. So that's my problem, because I'm hoping to deliver a positive message to as many people as I can. And positivity is a very important thing. If you can't to at least some degree put what's happened to you behind you and move forward, you're not going to do a lot of work on getting better. Now, that whole grieving process is totally legitimate. I mean, I went through it. I was really blessed. Somehow in my thinking, even when I was in the rehab hospital, I decided there weren't any do-overs and there wasn't anybody to blame. I wasn't going to blame myself, even though it really probably was pretty much my fault. I didn't think that would do any good. I had high blood pressure and I ignored it. Well, I didn't ignore it. I dropped 30 pounds and was exercising, and it dropped a bunch of points off my blood pressure, but blood pressure is not something you can mess with, because I had a stroke on my exercise bike. Yes, training for the senior games, and my blood pressure was like 140 over 90, like right on the edge of the where it turned red at the time. They've moved the red down a little bit, probably a good idea, because I had a stroke when I didn't think I could have a stroke.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very. I mean, very similar to me. I mean, I had my stroke when I was 17 years old. I was just a week away from my uni exams, and obviously I had a massive ego, going to one of those schools where only smart kids went to, like the selective schools they call here in Australia, where they pick the top performing students or whatsoever. And so I was very muscular. I worked out a lot. Pretty much thought I was invincible and made of titanium. so I had mine.
I use the word bulletproof.
Yeah.
I give a motivational speech, and it's usually women in the audience, because there are more women in healthcare than I'm usually talking to healthcare professionals. There are more women.
Yeah.
And, I go, how could this happen to a perfectly healthy 58-year-old, which is how old I was? And, I talk about how I thought it was bulletproof. I thought nothing could happen to me. And I go, you know the type, and I take the mic and I put it right in my mouth and I go, man. And they just about fall on the floor, because they're all married to one, or they've all had patients that were stubborn. Actually, I say that since my stroke, I've been trying to take a more feminine approach to healthcare because women are a lot better at being proactive than men are. So
Yeah, yeah,
I try to
definitely.
learn a lesson from this silly stroke.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think one of the most, I think we're actually blessed, because we did have that background in wanting to push ourselves before our stroke, and after having the stroke, I guess all like everything we developed going through that, I guess developing those traits, it sort of translated to stroke recovery, and that it is something which you have to be constantly pushing yourself to get that 1% or 2% improvement after stroke recovery, knowing that you are trying to do something to sort of push that needle a little bit further each day, knowing that it might not work, but it might work as well. And if it does work, that you're going to be getting a lot more return on your investment, I guess.
Well, I was familiar with all those concepts because I had, dabbled in doing a couple of sprint length triathlons and some biathlons and some 5Ks and things. I like to keep myself in decent shape. So when I got out of the rehab hospital, I just said to myself, okay, I got a new training program. It took me a few days to turn it into 10 hours a day, but I knew what I had to do, and I knew how to focus my mind on a goal. And so that's what I did. And I learned a bunch of things along the way. Let's see, you asked me about that earlier, and I mentioned some, kind of skipped over um, others. I learned that paying attention to the details is really important because form is much more important than distance. I actually started, thinking, more guy thinking. More is better. I got to do more of these,
Yeah, okay. So
So
I guess these are the things which you've learnt on your recovery after stroke. Which if you could go back in time, obviously these are some of the things which you would tell a younger Ralph, so that he wouldn't have to learn the harder way. Would you say that's true?
yeah, I would definitely say the most important thing for 69-year-old Ralph to tell 58-year-old Ralph would be concentrate on form. Don't worry about walking. Worry about the pieces. See, you have this mindset that in order to get whole again, you have to do the things that you used to do, and uh, myself included, many of us try and do a lot of them right out of the gate. And
Yeah.
uh, when you don't have any upper leg strength, core, or hip strength, you're going to have drop foot. So the more you walk with drop foot, the more you're kind of reinforcing those patterns. And I did that. I did that for 4 or 5 months. And then I asked my physical therapist, and he actually said, length over form. The physical therapy assistant chased me out into the parking lot and said, I can't say this in front of him, but he's all wrong. So I called back to the rehab hospital that I'd been in because I had a lot of confidence in them. And they told me, no, absolutely do form. Stop walking that far. They actually told me I could, by that time, walk on my heels and walk on my toes. These are not things that I recommend to people unless they're getting on up towards fairly high level because they require a fair amount of balance, and I don't like to advocate anything that anybody could potentially get hurt doing. But they also told me to pattern walk, so I
Yeah.
um, I very intentionally. My wife and I had always race walked, so I knew actually prior to my stroke I could actually race walk 12-minute miles with the whole hip thing and everything.
Is this power
So
walk? Because we call it power walking in Australia.
yeah, same thing, power walking. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, well, they call it in the Olympics. I think they call it race walking. But anyway, it's the same thing. Big, strong arm movements. and I accentuated those arm movements, and I worked on walking perfectly. And I didn't worry about distance. When my forearm started to fall apart, they said, when your forearm falls apart, stop. And that's been a mantra of mine in working with everybody. All 11 people, well, 10, because we really haven't started with number 11. All the people I've worked with, that's been a mantra, because you don't want to be doing them. I'd rather have 5 clean ones than 50 dirty ones,
Yeah.
50 messy ones. Because you have to unlearn those things later. And already I've noticed in the folks that I work with, sometimes they can't do something. And in order to get to where they can do something like walk, you sometimes have to do things that aren't the way they're going to be. And I'm real hesitant to do that. I know you have to make suggestions, on how to get from here to there, because I know you have to do it, but I also am knowing that if they're not doing something with proper form, they're going to have to unlearn that.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty careful not to do anything that has to get unlearned unless it's a bridge to where you want to get. Like right now, I'm working with a guy to get his foot back. We're also working on weight shifting, so his foot isn't all the way back. So I have to take some weight shifting where his foot's not in perfect position. And that's kind of a compromise, but I don't want to wait on the weight shifting until his foot comes 100% around. And we didn't do it for a long time. Once I got his foot, close enough to what I consider a position that wouldn't do any harm, then we started doing it. So there's a lot of judgments and things, and that's what I try and provide for the folks that I work with, because I think I have a little more experience between myself and others than they do, because they're only dealing with themselves with one person. I don't pretend to know, to think that I have all the answers or anything, but I do pay a lot of attention to things, and I have learned a lot of stuff, pretty much on my own. And it's kind of interesting when I talk to other physical therapists, which I do, like this young man with a brain aneurysm. All this week, I've been going up there and talking to his physical therapist. And I actually find that after all this time, I can talk to him, and we're talking about the same concepts. I just don't know the medical terminology for this stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
in a lot of cases. But so I would tell people who are going through stroke recovery a few things. Yeah, right. See what you can do about your attitude. Well, I mean, it just doesn't work like that, Ralph. I mean, you can't just tell somebody
Yeah.
see what
No.
you
No.
can
You
do
can't.
about your attitude. But I would tell people attitude is key, because without some kind of a good attitude, without some level of acceptance about moving away from the event towards a future, as opposed to dwelling on the event, that's key. Another really key thing is to learn how to listen to your body, because your body will tell you when to stop. That's
Yeah.
one of
That's a
the
tough
most
one.
that's one of the most important things, because especially for guys, because okay, we're going to do 50 of them. By God, okay, now we're leaning way over, we're killing our
Yeah. Yeah.
QL
Yeah.
muscle, but we're going to do 50 anyway. So the more is more mentality, kind of, especially for guys, that's something that needs to get tossed out the window. Look at form and do as many as you can do that are good.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I would agree with that 100%. I mean, I still see clinicians these days and like these aren't like occupational therapists, but these are exercise physiologists. And I don't know if you have them in the States. Do you have them?
No,
Exercise physiologists, right?
yeah, we do, but we don't have as many.
Okay.
They're kind of rare. You can find them, but most people, well, for example, I recovered from my stroke, and I was 3 years into helping people before I ever heard of one, and I had to look them up. So it's not that common a thing, or it seems like I would have bumped into it earlier. And it makes a lot of sense because they're kind of a big picture person. And putting all the pieces together, and at least in the States, the issue is you got a neurologist, you got a primary care physician, you got all these different people, and they aren't really working together. We don't, it's not a system.
Yeah.
In the sense that you go see one person, you go see another. They don't talk. They don't ever compare notes. Actually, I think there are people out there that think that their doctors are talking to each other. And I'm here to tell you they're not. When you step out of that examining room, they've already forgotten about you. So it's up to you. This is another important lesson to learn. If you want something to happen with your doctors, then it's up to you to make it happen. Yeah, okay, so now I realize what I'm saying is, I'm throwing it on the stroke survivor to pay attention to their body, have a good attitude, be their own patient advocate. I'm just loading everybody up with all these responsibilities. But unfortunately, that's pretty much the way it is. Like you said, you would have killed for somebody. I would have loved to have somebody that I could turn to. My neurologist for a long time until said, he released me. I said, what does that mean? He said, well, it means I don't need to see you anymore. And I said, but you're answering my questions. What if I want to see you? He said, well, keep coming. So I did, but he worked in a hospital system, and they made him, he had experience with pediatric neurology, and they lost their pediatric neurologist, and they sent him over to that department, and they let me see him one more time, and then because I was supposedly grandfathered in, but then eventually I couldn't see him. So I'm back to Google, Dr. Google, and Dr. Google can be right, might not be right, and you don't really know.
I mean, I definitely agree with that, especially going back to what I said earlier. Like, there are so many unknowns in recovery after stroke. Even now, like, some of the clinicians, they don't know how to necessarily explain a complex topic into a simple way in which stroke survivors are able to understand. So it's really up to the stroke survivor to turn up to the sessions and not only just treat the sessions as you just getting exercise from the therapist, but also as an opportunity for you to learn and educate yourself on how to transition from someone who is initially dependent on someone else to tell them how to exercise and what exercise to do, to someone who is now at a point where myself and Ralph are at, where we're at a point where we've sort of figured this out and we know sort of what to do, how to do it, and why we have to do things to it in order to sort of get that 1 or 2% improvement in our recovery and keep recovering and changing things as we go, so that we're constantly course correcting, I guess.
Well, while we're on the subject, let's talk a little bit about making use of, I'm going to throw something else onto all stroke survivors, how to deal with your PT and your OT, okay? Because I see a lot of people out there, and they seem to think that if they're going to go to PT, there are a lot of the same ones who say, oh, I'm going to PT in 3 weeks, I'm excited. You don't get better going to PT twice a week, 45 minutes or an hour. If that's all you're doing, it's going to be a long haul. PTs and OTs are great, but we don't have a personal one assigned to us, for the entire week. So what you need to do is, if your physical therapist or your occupational therapist, not everybody has them, if you're lucky enough to have an OT in addition to a PT, isn't giving you homework, you should take it on yourself to ask them for homework. And then when you come back in, you should demonstrate that homework and ask them if you should keep doing it or if they should assign new homework. I do this even with some of the people that I work with. I've gotten them onto Medicare disability and then gotten them into physical therapy. And sometimes the physical therapists let me come back during the session. Sometimes they don't. If they don't, I drop them off and pick them up. And every time I drop them off, I tell them, yeah, we did marching all week. And then when I pick them up, I say, more marching, or you got anything else? And they'll say, no, more marching, or add some butt kickers, or whatever might be next on their list. So work with your PT. They're a valuable resource, but you need to pick their brain enough to know what to do. The folks that I see getting better are spending several hours a day, most every day. Now, I don't say you have to do 10 hours a day like I did, but if you don't do an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, and try and do it 7 days a week, so maybe you do it 5 or 6, then I don't think you're making the effort that you should to get better. And the more horrific your stroke was, probably the more that's true. People who, well, there's no such thing as a minor stroke, so let's not even use those two words in the same sentence. And I tell people, if you go into your OT and they're telling you how to put rubber bands on your buttons, and you want to get your hand better so it'll work, you need to find a new OT. Everybody seems to think like they get assigned an OT and that's it, or a PT. If you're not getting along with your clinician, ask for somebody else. Not only are their personality issues. First of all, if you don't get along with your PT, I think it hurts you. I've always tried to have PTs that I like, because when I like them, I want to please them. And when I want to please them, I go home and I do the work so I can go in and show them, look, I did it. Okay, what's next? And just keep checking things off the list. It becomes a thing that you can do with your physical therapist. Use them to motivate yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I tell people when they start, if you have an OT who's teaching you how to put on clothes one hand or make a sandwich one-handed, and you want to get that hand back, ask for somebody else. Yeah, it can be awkward, especially if you don't switch establishments, but I've actually requested for people that I'm working with that we switch, and then we go back in there. And clinicians are professionals, so if they see somebody doing better with somebody else, they're not going to get pissy about the whole thing. They're going to say, great, I didn't like him, we didn't get along, he's doing better over there.
Yeah.
So it's not something to worry about. Besides, you're the one trying to get better. When I was trying to get better, I'd do about anything. I wouldn't hurt people or anything, but if I ended up stepping on somebody's feelings to get better, because I had to, because I don't try and step on people's feelings just as a matter of course, then I'd do it. So look out for number one would be the would be the advice there. We were talking about breaking things down. I had a guy, this is an interesting short story.
Yeah.
I had a guy who was asking me about walking and better through Facebook Messenger, and he sent me videos. And I could see he had leg weakness and drop foot, mostly upper leg weakness. Everybody always says, my knee won't bend. Well, your knee will bend. And they go, no, it won't. And I say, sit down in a chair. Okay, both your feet on the floor? And they go, yeah. I go, well, your knee bends, because if your knee didn't bend, it'd be sticking straight out. But your knee doesn't bend because your upper leg and your hip and your core don't have the strength to lift it. So this guy was interested in walking better. And I said, you want to try something as an experiment? And he said, sure. I said, okay, for 30 days, only walk as a part of life. Don't do any intentional walking. Don't reinforce the drop foot and the patterns that you have going on right now. And I gave him a list of exercises to do, heel raises. They're all standard stuff. Heel raises, butt kickers, marching, kicking, all stuff to build up that upper leg. And he did it for a month. And then he sent me another video of him walking. He was shocked. I was shocked, but I'm supposed to know what I'm doing, so I didn't act quite as shocked as he was. He was pretty shocked because his walking was a lot better, and he didn't walk during that time.
Yeah, sure.
He worked on the pieces. So if you're having trouble doing something, all the pieces, try and figure out how to break it down. In order to break it down, you have to understand it. So I'm going to take it back to the PT, because I can't have a PT that can't explain it to me. It's the very first thing that I say to any PT that I'm working with. I have to understand what's going on if you expect me to do this, because I have to, for a couple reasons. I have to understand it so that I believe in it, so it makes sense, so I feel like that's the road I should be on, not questioning, should I be doing this? So that's one aspect of it. So it's up to you to get the most out of your PTs.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
definitely agree.
what I've found is actually most clinicians really like a patient that is involved in their own recovery, is asking a lot of questions, that's going home, that's doing the work, that's coming in and showing you what you asked them to do last week that you could not do. Now this week you can do it. Because I think they get so many people who are wishy-washy, for lack of a better term. I've sat in the back with people. I sat in the back with one gal twice a week for a year and a half. That's 150 times, 150 45-minute sessions just with her in the back. And I watched all kinds of other people, across the room, what they were doing or not doing. And you could pretty much pick out the people who were going to get better. I didn't know them, I didn't talk to them, but I could just see the effort they were putting in versus some of the people are resistant, Well, actually, the gal that I took 150 times, when they set up 3 chairs and we started playing, like sometimes people play baseball, like you run the bases, but basically they set up 3 chairs and they had her walk from one to the other and then go the other way. And it was for transferring and approaching stuff. And, she hollered out in the middle of the room, this is stupid, I came here to learn how to walk. Well, guess what? If you can walk 30 feet from this chair to that chair, that doesn't mean that you know how to do those little, what I call them scoochy steps, where because you walk into a chair, you're facing it. You want to sit down, you got to turn your butt around. So all those steps are equally important, and so I would say also listen to your physical therapist. Sometimes you may not have the big picture. You can always ask them, well, why is this important? And they'll tell you, well, because when you go one way, you approach the chairs one way. You approach them with your weaker side, and when you go the other way, you approach them with your stronger side, and both of them require thinking about how you're going to do it and how you're going to turn around and sit down. So therefore, it's important. So I think the other reason that it's important to understand things is that when you understand a task and what you're trying to get out of it, then you can often, sometimes yourself, break it down into its components. Like I broke down walking for that guy. I mean, I didn't break down walking. Everybody in the world, every PT in the world knows all the exercises that I gave him. I was given them. I learned them. I adapted some of them because, I don't have parallel bars at home. So I got an old walker. I never had a walker. I was working with somebody, and they were doing parallel bars, and we were doing toe placement and then heel toe stuff on the parallel bars. Well, I didn't have parallel bars. So I got an old walker, and I put 2 25-pound sandbags on it. Bingo, we got a walker. I mean, we got parallel bars. How do you do high stepping safely? Well, you can grab the kitchen counter. I got a bar in my kitchen, perfect height, or else you can do it out on a fence in my yard. So when I shoot all my videos, I show safe ways of doing them. I show it on my kitchen counter. I show it out on my fence. Um, Everything that I've done, I've shot in my house because I'm a big believer that you get better at home, and I'm also a big believer that you don't need 4,000, $15,000 overhead walking devices, or while $6,000 electric. Uh, I don't want to name any brands here or anything. They make these things that stimulate your ankle for you to pull up your toe, and
It's the
it
bias.
senses you're walking.
Yeah,
They're very helpful for some people, but most people's insurance won't pay for a
yeah,
$6,000
yeah,
device.
exactly.
So everybody's there dreaming about having this device or that device or things that are going to make them better. And I'm here to tell you, things don't make you
No,
better.
no,
You make yourself better.
exactly.
And you can do it with things. I'm not here to discount things like eStem.
Yeah,
Um, by the way, sometime we need to have a private conversation, because I keep seeing people using TENS units, and I'm under the impression that it should be using eStem, but that's neither here nor there.
yeah.
So eStem, or things that help you with drop foot. Uh, Jeez, I saw some guy with a $15,000 mechanical arm. They're all great if you can get them, and your insurance company will pay for it. But so many people hang their recovery on one of these devices or something. And okay, I'm going to say this. I worry that some of them are looking outside of themselves for the solution, and
Yeah,
I think that's a big mistake. There, I said it.
yeah. I mean,
Uh,
I definitely agree. Like, you know, for everyone listening out there, like, there is no magical glove or magical, you know, silver bullet which you can purchase on the stroke market right now, which can miraculously help
no, and
help
I'm
you
here to
recover
tell you,
from your
okay,
stroke really quickly.
so this is my affected hand, and I can roll my fingers. I can roll them in both directions.
Yeah,
How did I learn how to do that? I learned how to do that on my own. I didn't even know about it. There are two kinds of mirror therapy. One is where you use a mirror and you try and trick your brain into
yeah,
thinking
yeah. The
you're
mirror
doing
box.
things with your good hand. The other one is where you use one side. It's actually called opposite side something or
No,
other.
that one's called bilateral therapy.
Bilateral. So I sat on my bed and I couldn't make my fingers fire right. I know that was my unaffected hand, because I don't show bad behavior with my affected hand. I never let anybody do it. I think it's a bad idea. Um, so I couldn't make any fingers fire. So I said, what happens if I do both? Well, this one didn't go perfectly, but it did better. So I'd do like 5 in a row. And then
Yeah,
I'd start doing this one, and then it'd fall apart. I'd go back to doing 5 in a row. I actually thought I invented something. I went back to my PT and said, "You're not going to believe this. You can use one side of your body." And she started looking at me like, "I can't believe what this guy's saying." So when I was all done getting excited, she said, "Ralph, when you get home, look up Google mirror therapy." So I basically invented something that had been around for 100 years. But that's
I
okay.
probably wouldn't let it get to your head, eh?
I, 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 I'm here to tell you I invented it because I did not know it existed. So
Yeah,
that's the
true.
kind of thing that you need to be doing for yourself. Just,
Yeah,
I have a friend of mine who's an occupational therapist, and I need to get him more involved in what I'm doing. Uh, he has this very interesting thing. He's taking some time off from his career right now. He's raising his 2 kids. He's being a stay-at-home dad. His wife's a physical therapist. Anyhow, he has this theory that play allows you to learn a lot faster. And it's interesting. So he invents all these things that are kind of like games and things. If nothing else, the one thing that, say, some of those gloves and video games and things do is they do occupy your brain in other ways, so that you could possibly end up doing more physical therapy because you're not realizing how long you're doing it. I've heard people make that comment when people say, "This is whatever glove is, will that work for me?" What they really want to know is, is it going to make them all better without them doing a whole lot? Um, But I've seen a number of people say, yeah, it worked well for me because I ended up doing it a lot longer than I would have if it wasn't a game.
Yeah, true.
So,
And I mean, I think the thing with virtual reality and all those games is that it gives your brain another reference point on how to actually apply that actual skill or task which your brain has already learned from its exercises in like a different condition or environment. And that's basically something I tell some of the clients I work with is quite often, recovery after stroke, like learning a new skill after stroke, it's like watching the Olympics in that when you look at Olympians, like when they're training for the Olympics, the reason why they're so good is because every single day they're applying they're applying the exact same skill underneath a different environmental condition, whether that might be, if it's raining or, if like the weather's or like the timing is, or sorry, if they're performing under a different time constraint. And so they're always getting better at that skill because they're always applying the exact same thing in a different environment. A lot of the products in stroke, particularly all your magical gloves and all your virtual game stuff, they're pretty much variations of what you would typically do with exercise at home, but they're just underneath a different condition or environment. And so your brain gets that different reference point on how to apply whatever it's learnt already. And so that's why you tend to see that 1% or 2% improvement when you buy that magical glove. It's because your brain's already your brain's realized another way of applying whatever it's already learnt underneath a different conditional environment. And I think that's
well,
why, yeah, go on.
I think that we're on the verge of some real change in stroke recovery. Um, I'm told that Europe is way ahead of the United States in terms of rehab. Now, why somebody doesn't fly over there and learn it all and bring it back, if that's the case, I'm not quite sure of. Maybe I should look into that. But there's in the United States at least, there's been very, very little research done on stroke recovery. And most of the effort has gone into stroke prevention and stroke awareness,
Yeah,
and dealing with dealing with strokes. 20 years ago they couldn't. Now they can stick a thing in your leg on the end of a catheter, go up into your brain and grab the blood clot and pull it out, or send like a rotor-rooter thing, send a drill bit into your brain and drill inside of a 3 millimeter blood vessel.
yeah, that's right.
Mind-boggling. So they've done made a lot of progress with intervention techniques, prevention, awareness, but that's been the focus in the States, keep it from happening. But we're not really keeping them from happening. Basically, in the 10 years since I had my stroke, it's gone up about 40,000 people a year. I don't know how that compares to per capita, but I would say we're having about as many. And I would say that more young people are definitely having them. I live in the state of South Carolina. At one point, 20 or 30 years ago, about 15% of all strokes nationally were under the age of 65. Nationally, in the United States, it's about 30 now. I live in a state, South Carolina, that's part of what they call the stroke belt, and we're actually along the coast. They call it the buckle of the stroke belt. We have 3 times as many strokes as most other states do. Twice inland and 3 on the coast. They can't really figure out why. But right now in South Carolina, over 60% of all strokes are people under the age of 65. This really changes the dynamic because, well, back in the day, if somebody was 75 or 80 and they had a stroke, they figured, okay, they lived their life, they're in a wheelchair, the rest of the 5 years they got left, then so be it. Was that fair? Who knows? That was the reality of it, and stroke is very different if you're 80 years old than if you're 30 years old, or 17 in your case. Because when you're younger, you want to get back to work. you might not have a family yet. You might want to have a family. You might already have a family that you want to be able to take care of your kids and hold them up with two hands, and lots of things. The younger you are, the more important it is to get back to the life um, that you had, or something resembling it anyway, as much as you can. That brings up a whole discussion, because I'm not a big believer in thinking that we're going to go back to where we were.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a good point to raise up in recovery after stroke is you can't go forward if you spend all your time looking in the rearview mirror, thinking about,
That's right.
who who you could have been, all right? The quickest way to actually take control of, I guess, the steering wheel of recovery after stroke is to obviously accept that, what's happened has happened, and it's up to you to take that first step into the unknown and start making things happen for yourself. And that's sort of where, and that I guess that's sort of where these Facebook support groups and these clinicians come into play. There are opportunities for you to reach out and educate yourself on how to recover what was lost and get back to a point which is as close as possible to where you were before, or where you want to be moving forward.
Well, sometimes when I talk about acceptance, I think people are thinking, that they should accept that they're going to be like this for the rest of their life, and that is not what I'm saying, or my idea of acceptance. My idea of acceptance is what you're saying. Don't look in the rearview mirror. Um, After I accepted what had happened to me, and I moved on, and I was having and I was doing my therapy every day. That didn't mean that I didn't still have bad days. I had bad days. Um, so it's not like a total thing. You just have to have enough acceptance to get up off your butt if you can, or if not, lift your legs in a wheelchair. To start the program of moving away from the event. So it doesn't mean that you're going to roll over. It doesn't mean that you're going to accept any, the way that you are right now is not necessarily the way you're going to be. It doesn't mean that you can't start a program until you feel like everything's all, happy, because I'm here to tell you I had difficult days. I spent 18 months on antidepressants. I had days where I felt like everything was wrong with the world. I learned how to fake it until you can make it, or is the common term. But I sometimes I just get involved in today, and I do what I call dive towards tomorrow. Because when you wake up every day, you get another chance to have a new attitude. So when I would do diving towards tomorrow, I just like try and not think about it, lose myself in the mindlessness of pulling on rubber bands or walking laps in the driveway, and just when I got funky in my head, trying to remember tomorrow's another day. This too will pass. So acceptance doesn't necessarily mean that the whole grieving process is over. So that's what I found. A lot of this comes back to attitude and motivation. And I kept the attitude quote in my wheelchair pocket from Chuck Swindoll, and I would read it regularly. I also kept a picture of my daughter and granddaughter, and if I started having a hard time, I'd pull it out and say, I want, say to myself, I want to live, I want to walk, I want to, do things. I want to watch this kid grow up, and I want to be there for my daughter.
Yeah.
So I think it's also important to find things in your life that you can latch onto for motivation, like family or goals. I think I don't think it's a good idea to set huge goals early on. I saw somebody a month or so ago saying, I'm going to run a 5K in March. Well, you're not walking yet. That's pretty ambitious. And
Yeah.
so if you say, I'm going to do it in March, and you don't do it in March, are you going to set yourself back? Another lesson, I keep going back to, we keep talking about things, I keep going back to the lessons I learned. Now I'm going to try not to forget this one. I did. What were we talking about? Oh, senior moment. Actually, it's not a senior moment, and it's not a stroke moment. We all do this when we're 20 years old and just fine. Have a brain fart. I just did. In the middle of this interview. Anyway.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we covered like a lot, but I think like the main thing is really around that idea of taking personal responsibility. Would you say that's true?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. You have to, I kind of hinted at it, but I'll put it into a few words. You kind of have to be your own therapist. You kind of have to be your own cheerleader, too. And I know I'm heaping stuff on everything I'm talking about. I'm heaping it onto the stroke survivor, but I don't think you're going to find anybody out there who's going to do it for you. So if you want it done and you want to get better, you have to take that personal responsibility. Now I remember what we were talking about. Be your own therapist.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, therapy is all around you. I interviewed a guy named Neil Isaac, who's a member of both of our groups, who's kind of fanatical in a way that I like. He does PT and OT every day. He integrates everything into life. It cost him $20 to go to the gym to do leg lifts, so he decided to walk 17 flights up and down his apartment building. I mean, this is brilliant. No, it's simple, but it's brilliant. And I see that a lot of people would like somebody to offer them a hand, and I'll offer a hand to anybody that I can. But you also are going to do yourself a big favor if you start trying to figure this stuff out. You start trying to say, hey, well, okay, for an example, after 14 months of working 10 hours a day, I didn't stop in one day, but I tapered off pretty quick. And because I got tired of pulling on rubber bands, is the way I put it. Now, I did a lot more than pull on rubber bands, and I'm referring to TheraBand type stuff. But that's the way I summed it up. And I said, I want to keep what I got. So how can I integrate some of the stuff that I've been doing to get better into my daily life? And so I started doing stuff like opening all jars with my affected hand. I didn't do it that way before my stroke. The interesting thing is, see, our brains are all automatic, and you don't know how you did anything before your stroke. Then you have your stroke and you go, oh my God, how do I, like, somebody told me I wanted to run again. They said, well, practice skipping. I went in my backyard and I went, how do you skip? I couldn't remember how to skip, and I still can't. So there's no map. You don't have any map in your brain right now. Somebody who hasn't had a stroke has no map in their brain how they walk, how they do anything. They just do it automatically. And when you have a stroke, all of a sudden, you don't know how to do a lot of those things. So anyway, I probably didn't open jars with my left hand. Now I do, always. I put things back in the refrigerator with my left hand because I got some shake, and holding a like 6-pound jug of water out on the end of my arm, that'll bring out my shake. And if I can bring it out, then I can conquer it. And, so a lot of times if the water pitcher is full and I got a lot of shake, I'll stop and I'll hold it there and I'll make the shake stop, and then I'll finish putting it in. So there's thousands of things you can do. And so when I saw what Neil was doing, and I actually drove 5 hours from here to interview him because I thought what he would likely have to say was important. I also saw him as an ally, somebody that saw things the way I did, and I felt like I have to use the word use. I'm not using him, but I thought that if I interviewed him, I could bring the philosophy that we share to a lot of people without it always being me. I worry, okay, I stand up on the soapbox and I preach and preach and preach and preach. So in Neil, I saw somebody who was a kindred spirit. And actually on my YouTube channel, I interviewed him, there's eight segments. One is all 7, and then there's 7 broken down. And one of them is called Be Your Own Therapist, and the other one is called Therapy is All Around You. He started off at Christmas time. He came up with this thing to do for the 12 days of Christmas. So he flipped a light switch 12 times, and then he programmed 11 into a microwave, and then he put away 10 water bottles. And then he did something else 9 times, and he went through the 10 days of Christmas, and he turned it into therapy. He also times himself. I'm not that big on timing because
Yeah.
back to the whole speed versus
Me
quality
too, exactly.
thing. But
like seems pretty
it's
old.
a way that he can measure himself,
Yeah.
and he likes to make progress. So it's a way you can measure yourself. But and speaking of which, I found setting very small goals was the way to go. Because if you set a small goal, then you achieve it. When you achieve a goal, then you feel good about yourself. Success builds on success. I'm here to tell
exactly.
you.
Small hinges
When you
swing
feel
big
good
doors.
about yourself, you feel good about what you did yesterday. So, like, I'm doing 8 of these. I can only do 8, and I do 9 one day, right? So what's the goal for tomorrow? The goal for tomorrow is to try and do 9 again if you can. It isn't 10. I don't up it to 12. I say, okay, I did 9. It's the first time I did 9. So I'm going to try and do 9 again. And if I don't do 9, I've been doing 8 for a month. So 8 is totally acceptable. You don't want to get down to 5 or something unless you're having a bad day. And sometimes you just have a bad day and you have to walk away from something. And if you do not beat up on yourself, because we all go through it. If you beat up on yourself, you're going back to being your own worst enemy. And to get better, you need to be your own best friend. So, so a lot of times I would find, okay, I could do 9 again. Okay, maybe I'm stuck on 9 now. So the goal for tomorrow is do 9 again. I'm not gonna jump it up to okay, 15 is the goal for tomorrow, because if it took me a while to get from 8 to 9, it's going to take a while to get from 9 to 10. But if you keep doing 9, and you keep feeling good about yourself, you'll get to 10, you'll get to 15. When I started walking out of the rehab hospital, I had to have somebody with a gait belt. And I lost my person with a gait belt. Actually, a friend came down for 10 days. My wife couldn't do it. She had a job. And I didn't have anybody. So I had to go out and I had to walk without a gait belt if I wanted to walk. And that was crazy hard, scary. Because fear, well, we could all have a whole hour on fear. Because fear plays into the whole thing. And I work very hard with everybody I work with to alleviate fear so they can concentrate on the task at hand. Because if you can get rid of the fear, then they have more brain to put to what you're trying to get them to learn how to do. But when I started, I could walk 1 lap around my driveway, 1/20th of a mile. That's all I could do. And so when I went outside, I would do that, and I would sit down, and I'd do like 2 or 3, one at a time. I eventually got up to where, I was walking 3 miles and not good, and I started over like I mentioned earlier, and then I got back to where I could do 3 miles walking pretty good, and I've done as much as 6 miles. I'm not trying to. If I wanted to, I could train and I could walk 10 miles. But I don't walk 10 miles in my daily life, so I have no need to. Occasionally, I like to go on a hike in the mountains or in nature. I'm a nature photographer. Or recently, I was on vacation. We went to gardens, and I wore my cell phone, and I realized I walked 4.5 miles just around the gardens because they were big. To see a garden, I had to do 12,000 steps. So I've trained myself to do the things that I want to and need to do in my life, and beyond that, I'm okay with a couple of things I can't do. I don't do too well with two full glasses, like wine glasses,
Yeah.
because I'll shake the liquid out of one of them, and I have not been able to run more than about 50 yards. And when I run, it's really goofy looking, and my arms aren't going right. And I wanted to hug. I'm going to admit it here on, out in public. I don't believe that neuroplasticity stops. And I can tell you this year, I picked up a tennis ball and learned how to throw it with my left hand. Now, I never threw left-handed. I was right-handed. So when I started, I could throw it 24 feet, and I threw it all over the place. I'm 11 years out when I'm doing this. I have this on video. I need to edit it together and make a post.
Yeah.
It's stupid because nobody needs to throw a tennis ball. Next one I'm going to do is a 2 full water glasses challenge. I'm going to learn how to walk 50 feet without spilling the water, because that's more practical. But so every day I threw tennis balls about 10 or 20 times. And after about a month, instead of throwing them all over the place and never on the course, I'm throwing them right down the middle. Instead of throwing it 24 feet, I'm throwing it 40 feet. So, I mean, you can learn to do something no matter how far out you do.
Yeah.
You are.
I mean, definitely. I mean, when I had my stroke, I never thought that I would be able to eat with two hands. And I mean, you've seen my video that I upload in your group, the Play-Doh one. Like, I first started with Play-Doh, just testing it out and breaking it down first, and now I'm actually able to chop up meat like normal, like I used to, and that's awesome. So it never stops. You just gotta and I think the reason why some people think that neuroplasticity stops is because of maybe an uncertainty about how to change things up as they go, and I think that's an issue, which is mainly because maybe things haven't been explained to them as well as they could have been by therapists and whatnot. Because I mean, some of the
In the States, we have healthcare professionals that are still telling people that.
yeah
I used to think it was doctors, but I think it's mostly nurses who haven't caught up. The doctors seem to have kind of gotten the idea that's not the case. What I tell people is, okay, so you're 2 years out and you want to be just like you were 2 years ago. Well, even if you hadn't had a stroke, that's not possible. You're 2 years older.
yeah yeah
That
exactly
might not be so much of a thing when you're 20 versus 22, but I'm in my 60s. So, a couple years ago, I was stronger than I am now. So just the whole idea of going back to a life that existed at some other point in time is wrong. When I was getting ready to be released, I decided I wanted to walk out. The hospital did not want me to walk out, and they made it very difficult for me to do that. They threw up roadblocks, but I kept knocking them over.
yeah
And the final one was, oh, well, for your safety, we have to have your physical therapist walk out with you. And, I looked him right in the eye and I went, big smile, and I went, perfect, because Kathy's the reason I'm going to walk out of here, and I want her by my side. And they all rolling their eyes because they thought they'd finally found something that, was going to deter me. But right before I did that, I had not walked. I had not walked on my own.
yeah
And the day before I was to walk out the next morning, I'm going, I don't know how this is going to happen. I haven't walked on my own. So I'm in physical therapy with Kathy twice a day. In the afternoon, I'm thinking, maybe I better talk to her about walking on my own. And so we're walking back to the wheelchair, and I go to talk to her, and she wasn't there. And I looked over my shoulder, and she'd let go of me 20 feet back. And I didn't know it. Of course, I started to freak out, like, oh my God, no, I'm going to fall. She said, don't freak. You only got about 5 more steps to the chair. Just go sit in the chair. And I walked over and I did. So I managed to do that. But I didn't know, I was really unsure how that whole thing was going to go. But an hour before that, I was talking with one of the nurses at the nurses station. And I was thinking about the future and going home and what I was going to do, and I was trying to come up with a plan. Everybody around me acted like they didn't want to go to physical therapy, like they were going to go home. A therapist I talked to yesterday said, what you call it, the magic threshold. Like you get wheeled through your front door through the magic threshold, and you're automatically going to be whole again. That's not how it works. So I was
Oh,
thinking
this is
about
coming home, right? Haven't heard that before.
the magic threshold. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
like
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, yeah.
like you
Yeah,
wheel like
definitely. Because everyone thinks,
everybody acted like they, oh yeah, I had a stroke, but when I get home, everything will be okay.
yeah,
Anyway, it isn't. You still have to deal with it. In fact, if you've wasted 3 weeks in the rehab hospital, you're bad. They all wanted to go home. I was trying to figure out a way to get my insurance to pay for another 3 weeks. The only
yeah,
reason I didn't want to stay there was my wife was driving almost 3 hours round trip to see me every day. It was an hour and a half away from home because we lived in the country. That was the only reason I wouldn't have wanted to stay. I knew it was in the best place I could be. I had therapists all around me. I was doing 2 PTs, 1 OT, arm group, and pool therapy, 5 hours a day.
yeah.
What could be
Definitely.
better? Anyhow, so I'm thinking about all this. I'm talking to this nurse and about, like, what's the future hold for me? Because all stroke survivors do that for a month or two as
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
the whole grieving process. What's going to become of me? So I was thinking about that, and I just blurted out at the nurse's station to this one nurse, I know I'm going to be the best new me I can be. And that would be my advice to all stroke survivors. Work on being the best new you can be. That doesn't mean that you have to compromise. That doesn't mean that you have to accept you're going to be in a wheelchair or whatever. We talk about fully recovered. We could do an hour on what is fully recovered.
yeah. And we've
Because,
gone over an hour already. I mean, we could probably do 2 hours, but I mean, it's almost 12 o'clock in the
we could
morning
do
here
an hour just on what's
in
fully
Australia.
recovered.
But yeah. Anyway, go on. I think I interrupted
I'll
you.
just, and I'll finish up quickly. And because fully recovered is very different to somebody who's in the hospital on day 2
Yeah,
than it is to somebody who's been trying for a year and is struggling with walking and getting their hand back. Because fully recovered to the person who's 2 days in would be just like they were on Tuesday, not the way they are on Thursday. And to somebody who's a year in, it would be, God, if I could walk again and use my hand and engage in daily life without my loved one having to tie my hair back and tie my shoes, and if I could be independent. That's what every stroke survivor wants. They want to be independent. They don't want to be a burden on anybody else. And so, fully recovered, means something different to somebody a year in. I tell people I'm fully recovered. Am I? No, not to the guy who's 2 days in. I can't do certain things. I'm if I have a big day, if I walk 12,000 steps, I'll start getting some drop foot again when I get tired.
yeah,
So I'm not perfect, but I'm out there taking pictures of the garden, walking 12,000 steps. I tell people, okay, I'm fully recovered because I do everything for myself. I'm not dependent on anyone. I drive. I help other people. I maintain the gains that I've made, and wait for it, I'm happy. So, I mean, that's really a key. Um, and again, it was like in the beginning. Well, Ralph, you can't tell them to just have a good attitude. Neither can I tell them, when I say that's key, I can't say, well, just do that. But if you can, just do that. Because it all comes down to attitude. And if you don't have a good one, it's going to be a lot harder for you.
yeah, definitely. And also having some skin in the game as well. Because
Right.
stroke recovery is something you can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Like it's either you're committed or you're not. Because if you're only doing 50% of what you
Well,
could do, then you're not going to be able to reach your potential.
right.
You know what I mean?
I see a lot of people waffling on this, and it's like they don't start. And the reason I think that they don't start, my wife said it about something other than stroke recovery, and I had an aha moment about it. She said, if you don't start something, then you're not accountable because you're not in the middle of it. Once you start something, you're kind of accountable for the outcome.
Yeah,
And I think I can't say because I don't talk to every one of these people. I'm interpreting their words to me or a post in a group. But I, I see a lot of people waffling and stuck on this, and I worry that they might be doing the, well, not even conscious. Your brain is a wonderful thing. It also can be subversive. So maybe their brains are saying, well, somewhere in their subconscious, well, if I don't get started, then I'm not really accountable. Uh, I don't know. I just know that I was blessed to get rid of the blame pretty much right away, to move towards acceptance. I was wanting to work on getting better before I left the rehab hospital. Actually, I have friends of mine who tell me that they visited me in the rehab hospital and I was already talking about helping other people. I have zero recollection of that, but based on what's happened, and it sounds like me, and based on what's happened, and two people said it to me, I have to believe it must be true. So somehow or another, I got to where I was able to work on myself and have only a few pity parties now and then, and that's really key. That's
yeah.
really key.
I
And
mean, definitely,
I
I
would
think,
highly recommend talk therapy. I was the guy who didn't want to get on antidepressants. No, I don't need those things. Typical um, attitude I see a lot of people have. And they did me some good. They were a tool, and I got off of them. I got off of them after they weren't doing. I didn't feel they were doing anything for me, and I didn't have any trouble getting off of them, and I didn't go back to being depressed. So for me, they were a tool, and I'm glad that I accepted them. I also talked to a marriage counselor, a pastoral counselor, a psychologist, and a psychiatrist. Yep, I did. And I found all of them to be helpful. So if you're having issues with depression, I would seek help. Talk therapy, not necessarily the pills. Let somebody decide. Let you and your healthcare professional decide what's best for you. Because, like stroke, there's no one size fits all solution to any of these issues.
yeah, no,
So if you're depressed, figure out what you need. Talk to somebody. I would say if you had to pick one, talking might be better than antidepressants. I found both were very, very helpful. And talk therapy, antidepressants, while they help you, talking really gets to the bottom of some of the issues that you're struggling with and brings them up to the table. And when you get them up on the table, it seems like you're able to deal with them better. When maybe you're just admitting that it's an issue. I don't know. But I found talking to be very helpful.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, it can help you realize some things that maybe you might not have had that perspective on before.
Absolutely, it did for me.
Yeah. So we've covered so much in this interview. I mean, I I think we've gone over about 1 hour. We could probably go 3 hours, but I think just to sum up, the main thing I guess you've learned in your recovery after stroke is that it really comes down to that comes back to that whole idea of mindset and I guess taking responsibility for where you're currently at and knowing that if you do take that first one step, then eventually over the course of days and months, then you'll be able to achieve big goals by just taking a little step each day and just breaking down such a big goal of stroke recovery into small little pieces and just focus on conquering that one piece each day. And then over time, being able to look I guess, step back and have a look at, how much you've achieved to help, I guess, motivate yourself to keep going. Would you say that's true?
Oh yeah. You know how to eat an elephant?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I've heard that
One
term
bite at a
before.
time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That was kind of what I was alluding to.
I
But
wish
I
I'd come
mean,
up
I
with
mean,
a
there is
better one
another
than
one.
that.
It's small hinges swing big doors. Have you heard that
But
one?
taking that first step is key.
Yeah,
Um, uh, because I feel, and I can only base this on my experience and some of what I've seen working with other people, is if you make that first step, then you know you've gotten going. Are you where you want to be? No, but at least you're moving in some direction. May not even be the ideal direction, but you can always steer the ship.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
uh, you know, if we're going to stick with the ship analogy, you have to unrope it from the dock before you can get anywhere. And so setting sail on that, and that's a good analogy because this is a real journey, years and years. I also believe that people would serve you, all stroke survivors, to look at this as a lifetime thing. I do. I go to
yeah,
the gym 3 days a week still. I'm still trying to get better. Am I obsessed with it? No. I do little things, and I'm tweaking my walking and stuff like that. My main reason is my age. I'm older than a lot of folks, and also all the gains I made. I found that if I just live, um, I, I can continue to do the things that I need to do to live. But if I go to walk 3 miles or something and I haven't been doing it, it's a lot harder. So I have my gym membership because I have a therapy pool, and I like to take people to the therapy pool, and that's a real opportunity because not very many gyms have it. But
yeah,
I go 3 days a week basically to maintain what I've got. I also think it's important to make things easy for yourself in
yeah,
terms of doing therapy. When I went to doctor's appointments, I kept putty and a hammer and rubber bands and chip clips in the floorboards of the car. I'd do 15 minutes of OT on the way to the doctor's office. Uh, I stand on my affected leg when I pump gas. There's so many things that you can do to keep the gains that you made, and that's the main reason I go to the gym, because I find if I don't do high stepping and I don't do a lot of movement, then I have more trouble walking at the end of the day, or um, walking a long distance. And my wife and I are trying to we made a bucket list of places we want to go before we can't travel, and we're going to try and check them all off. And so it's important to me that I be a good partner, because she can walk. She can walk 50,000 steps if need be. And I don't want to be the drag on our travels. Oh, I can't go to Venice because they don't have cabs.
yeah, yeah,
Her number one thing is going to Venice. And my brother-in-law said,
yeah.
"Well, it's not real friendly for a stroke survivor." I said, "Too bad. I'm going to have to do it."
Okay. Yeah, and look, it is a lifetime investment to everyone who's listening to this. I mean, it's especially the ones who are very early in your stroke recovery. Look, it is going to be messy at the very beginning, and that's because a lot of what's going to happen next is going to be unknown. Okay, and you are going to want to you know have a look at the past and what happened in the past, and sort of want to reach back towards that. But you've got to eventually reach a point where you know that you can take an action right now, and you can change your circumstances with exercise, or reaching out to people who have traveled the journey as well, and learning learning the way they think and getting their perspective so that you can potentially shorten the amount of time it takes to recover.
Well, and I want to go on record as saying I'm perfectly okay with it being a lifetime um, commitment.
Yeah.
I had a hemorrhagic stroke, and 40% of people die that day, and 10% more so in the next week. So it's a 50-50 proposition because the mortality on hemorrhagic is a little greater than it is for clots. Not that that makes my situation worse than anybody else's. It just puts me in touch with the fact that I feel blessed to be here, to be able to help people, to be able to go to the gym 3 days a week. I don't look at it as a burden. I look at it as an opportunity, and I think if you embrace it as it's like it's not a when people try and lose weight, they make the ones who are successful make a lifestyle change. They don't go on a diet. So the more you can look at it as a lifestyle change, and early on, that's going to help you look forward too. Okay, if you can, in the first few months say, okay, I realize I have to do a lot of work to get better, and that I'll probably have to work harder than other people to stay functional for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that. To me, that's looking forward, and that's got to help you stop looking in the rearview mirror. So I just like to say I'm totally fine with being alive and having to do what I've got to do to maintain the level of recovery that I did, and so
Yeah.
can you.
I mean, definitely. I think it's really, valuable because you've obviously learned, you've obviously learned quite a lot in your recovery after stroke, and you've gained quite a lot of perspective. And for someone who has just had a stroke, to be able to hear, some of the things which we've discussed in this interview, like that's really valuable because then they're actually prepared for what's coming in their recovery, and they'll be able to know the best way to approach it from a mindset standpoint, I guess.
It's all about mindset.
Yeah.
All
So
about attitude.
I mean, we covered so much. We covered so much in this interview. We went.
Let's see, we got through 3 out of 10.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
have to do
three
this a couple more times,
three
maybe.
out of 10, and we actually had 10 questions, guys. So we probably could have gone for like 4 hours if we kept talking. But is there anything else you would like to add, Ralph?
No, just that I really enjoyed doing this. I am so glad that somehow or another the universe threw us together, like I am with Neil and all the other people that I feel
Yeah, yeah,
are get it in our kindred spirits. Because maybe if we band together, we can have some influence on other folks. And I know how important it is to be one of those other folks, and wish you had somebody you could turn to. And I think we should do it again, and I'm more than happy to do this some number of times. And know for all you listeners out there, I don't think I've got the answer to every single thing going on.
yeah, yeah.
I know
Of
I've
course.
learned a little bit, and maybe it can be helpful. And I'm not pretending to have all the answers by any means.
Yeah,
But
sure. I mean, yeah,
this kind of conversation is really good, especially if you're laying there a few weeks out, really raw, really wondering what's going to happen to you. I'm here to tell you I got better, and I think that anybody who puts their mind to it can get better. Are they going to run again? Who knows? Depends on how determined you are. Actually, being stubborn is a very good thing.
yeah, definitely.
Uh, I'm stubborn, and I wasn't going to give in to it. And I see people who are stubborn, and I think they do well because they just aren't going to. They don't accept things and roll over.
Yeah,
So you don't
I
want
think
to accept.
stubborn
You
and
don't
being
want to accept the
open-minded,
stroke and
definitely.
roll over. You want to fight it, and you can fight it. And there are a
Yeah,
lot of people like William and me and other Facebook groups and their YouTube channels. I've got one.
Yeah.
Uh, Lots of people, there's lots of stuff that you can use to get better. You don't need the devices. You just need to be self-motivated. Go out and find them. Work with your PT, OT. If you don't have one, if you don't have insurance, you can still do it on your own. A lot of the people I work with are people who graduated from their insurance and they still want to get better. They're in limbo. They can walk, they just don't walk as well as they'd like. And they're out of PT, but they're still doing a couple hours a day and of fine tuning. So it's not a matter of that you have to have a PT or you have to have an OT or you have to have a device. What you have to have is a mindset so that you can do it yourself at home, because that's mostly where it occurs. Mostly occurs at home, and it mostly occurs because of your effort. And certainly it's valuable to have PTs and OTs and coordinate with them and everything, but believe in yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, being open-minded and believing that, there is another way to obviously approach stroke. Because I mean, one of the clients I talked to, one of the clients I work with, like when I was talking to her, she told me that, she always believed that there was always another way aside from what they were actually telling her. Sorry, what the system was actually telling her, which was actually true. And I started seeing her about 2 years post stroke, where she had pretty much given up, and I just pretty much had to tell her to just rethink everything she had been told, so that she could actually have the perspective and look at recovery after stroke in in a way which would be beneficial for her moving forward, rather than believing what she was told, and I guess accepting what the doctors had told her about her recovery, saying that, there was not going to be any more hope. So it just
Well,
goes to show. Yeah.
good. I was to say, I'm a little crazy. I take on whoever the universe throws at me. So I've got a guy who had been graduated from physical therapy, um, and he was walking like 40 or 50 feet with two people holding him up. I guess they decided that was enough for him, or insurance did, or something. And so you get a guy that can barely stand, and wants to learn how to walk again. Well, I took him on, not knowing what was going to happen, and I still don't know what's going to happen. It depends on his energy. He's put a lot of energy into it, so he's come a lot farther than some of the other people I've worked with who basically do physical therapy if I come over to their house and do it with them. And I do that. I go do marching and whatever. Anyhow, with this guy, we got rid of his AFO. They terrified me because I didn't want to break anybody's ankle. So I've learned something there. He's now doing sit to stands without his AFO. He's lifting his foot again. He couldn't lift his foot after not being in PT for a while. I think we're going to have him back to walking 40 feet. And, the guy, I just lost the guy who's 2 days into this because he's saying 40 feet. What do you mean? That's a big deal. It'd be a really big deal for this guy to be walking again, no matter how poorly he's doing it or how short of a distance, because it comes back to what we've been talking about all the time. Once you get something going, and that, whether it's a mindset or a body part, you can build on that.
Yeah,
Both the
exactly.
mindset, that's the thing about short goals. Use short goals to continue to build a positive mindset. And,
Mm.
his feet have gone from being like this to being like this when he stands, from positioning and stuff that we've been doing. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that he does an hour or two a day, every day when I'm not there. And that's how you get better. We're kind of beating a dead horse here because I've said
Yeah,
it about 100 times,
yeah,
similar or the same things, but it's true. So
yeah. But
maybe
anyway,
we
I
should.
mean, me and Ralph, we've covered a lot today, guys. Probably, you know, a lot more than we intended. But this is something which we plan on doing more regularly, because we know that, obviously, that because stroke is something which is so holistic, and there's a lot more to recovery than obviously just exercise and mindset. There's definitely other things which come into play. This is something which which we think can only really. I think this is. I think it would be really beneficial for a lot of stroke survivors if we could really break down some of the things which we've learned in our recoveries after stroke, so that people can sort of understand a lot better how to approach their recovery after stroke, especially the ones who are just starting out.
Yeah, well, that's a few hours, right there. Like I said earlier, I'm happy to do this with you more. Because we've been doing this, it's made me think about, well, I wouldn't have to drive 5 hours to interview Neil in person. If I found somebody else, I could do it this way. So
Yeah,
I'm thinking about maybe doing some interviews. I'm actually a video professional by trade. So um,
yeah, okay,
uh, I've actually been thinking about it. And if people out there if you find this useful, let us know what you find useful, what you like about it, and maybe even like what kinds of subjects you'd like to see us discuss, because um, we're doing it for you.
yeah, true. Yeah, so I mean, for everyone listening, if you guys have any questions about some of the things we discussed, or if you're interested in learning more about a particular thing, or I guess something which you've experienced in your recovery after stroke, and you sort of want to know, why it is that you're feeling a certain way, then yeah, let us know, and we'll see if we've hopefully experienced, and if we can share our perspective and experience with it to help you gain some clarity around that.
It would make us, I can only speak for myself, but I suspect the answer is the same for you. That would make me happy to be able to do that.
Yeah,
That's what I'm doing. That's
yeah,
what I'm thinking about when I get up every morning, is how can I be that person that I wished I had for
mm,
other people?
yeah, definitely. So, I mean, in case no one has ever heard of you, Ralph, where can people find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook as Ralph Preston. I usually have a butterfly as my profile picture because I'm an old fart and I don't like seeing myself. Um, I also have a Facebook group like you do, and it's called Stroke Buddies, by and for stroke survivors. Like most groups, it's private, so you'll have to join it. It has to be private because people have workplace and awful family situations that they need to be protected from. I also, if you want, I post my phone number on Facebook. Believe it or not,
Hmm.
people probably think I'm crazy, but I see somebody who needs to talk to somebody, and I say, if you need to talk, here's my phone number. So I also have a YouTube channel, and it's Ralph Preston Video, all one word, no spaces. So you could find that, and everything says like stroke and stroke, walking better, stroke core, so everything's pretty well labeled there. And if you, so you can also Facebook Messenger me, assuming you find me on Facebook. If not, I have an email address. It's Ralph, RALPH, dot PRESTON at sc.rr.com. There are two dots after the S, and stands for South Carolina Roadrunner, sc.rr.com, my name with a period between it. And so anybody who wants to get in touch with me, I answer all emails, all messages. If you keep messaging me, I keep answering forever.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Awesome. Okay, so it was great to catch up, Ralph. I know it's heading it's close to 12:30 in the morning here on Tuesday for me. So I'm just gonna stop the recording here.
all
And
right.
yeah,
Thanks for
hope you
having
guys
me.
enjoyed it. Again, let us know what you guys think. If you do have any questions about some things in your recovery which you would like more clarity on, or if, yeah, then let us know.
Thank you, William.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph.